Okay, here we are, part two of class one video tutorial for 2D animation. I'm back on the class blog, and I'm scrolling down to find the file that we'll be using for this exercise. It's this image of all these different vegetables. Right-click on the image, save as, and you can save it on your desktop or wherever. And when that happens, we'll just go and place it onto our stage in Adobe Animate. And some of you might be thinking, isn't that the raster image, the typical JPEG image that I was told we're not using for drawing in this program? Well, you can't really edit or manage these kind of images with the kind of flexibility that you can in Photoshop or the like, but you can import them and animate with them and do various things with them. It's just that they're not the sort of native graphic form that we'll be using. Like you can't cut them up and do a whole lot with them in this piece of software. But we do like to trace them in vector form. So here I have my veggies. I've placed it on the stage, and it's super big on my very relatively small canvas. So what I'm going to do is scale it down, and I'll do that by clicking on the image and then clicking on the free transform tool and then grabbing the corner to scale it down and then holding shift so that it scales proportionally. And you can kind of do that a couple times. You can zoom out or in. Okay, so I have my veggies up on the stage, and you can work on it on the veggies off to the side and then draw on the stage itself however you like. And when we start drawing, what the exercise, I should probably explain. The exercise we'll be drawing using the techniques that we just explored with the simple shape tools and distortions and free transforms and that kind of thing. We'll be redrawing 5 of these vegetables for homework. And you're going to do at least 2 of the harder ones and 3 of whichever others you wish to do. And we want to get not total naturalism, but like a really good approximation of color and shape with a real feeling of the nuance and the kind of like care of modulation of the silhouette and everything that makes it feel like it's in touch with the it's sort of naturalism or the observed form. So it's got to feel pretty good. So we'll approach how to do that with one of the simpler forms and go from there. And I'll let you go on your own afterwards. But first off, as you start to draw, say I was starting off with a brush tool, as you start to draw, you'll notice that drawing doesn't necessarily work out when you have this JPEG image on the same stage as your vector drawing. So I'm going to undo that. The easiest way to kind of manage drawing on top of this is to go down to the timeline and actually create a new layer, which is a button all the way down at the bottom here, new layer. And layers work somewhat similarly to how they work in Photoshop or Illustrator. I'm just going to have this new layer up here. I'll lock the layer with my drawing on it for the time being by clicking on the dot under the lock icon associated with my layer. One annoying thing about Animate, which is maybe preferable by some, if you click on a layer, it automatically selects it. So if I'm working, I accidentally click on the background layer, then I'll be working on the background layer without knowing that I'm working on the background layer, and that can be a problem. If none of that makes sense to you, don't worry about it, but just create the second layer, and you should have 2 layers visible there, and then you can kind of draw to your heart's content. But we're not starting out with the brush tool. We're going to start. I'm going to ask you to substantially or mostly get your vegetables put together with these simple shape tools, with like 1 or more simple shapes, as many as you like. Cutting them up, building them with multiple shapes, distorting them, free transforming them, getting most of the way there with them, and then if you want to put in some accents or whatever with your brush tool or your pencil tool or whatnot, that's okay. So if you were to create, it's going to be a multi-step process. There'll be multiple steps in the way you think through it. You're starting simple and then particularizing the form. So uh, which of these simple forms would you begin with if you wanted to kind of craft or carve down a carrot of this shape and orientation? And I'd say, probably pretty obviously the oval tool. We don't need a star to do this kind of work. And you can start off by clicking on your fill and stroke colors. Now, if you don't want a stroke at all, you can actually turn off the stroke or the fill by clicking on the color and then going and then choosing this empty set. And that will give you no stroke at all. Of course, if you want a stroke for this and you want to have a graphic version of the carrot, that's okay. Okay, and I choose my color here from this. I have some swatches here that are popular. I guess my web colors here. And then if you want to get a little bit more nuanced in color, you can click on that. You can also click on your object. When you have this color picker open like this, you'll automatically have your eyedropper chosen. So you can actually like eyedrop and source the color from your image. If you choose to do it that way, that's fine. So I'm going to start off with an oval, just drawing something that kind of approximates the length and width of the carrot. It's not going to be right off the bat. So how would you go about getting to the next step? Now I could start the orientation is all wrong, but I think I could approach it rather simply, just through the simple distortions of the form that I could make with my selection tool, remembering to deselect the shape. Before doing so, I hover over the carrot and the semicircle appears, and then I can just drag this part of the carrot up, and I can drag this part of the bottom of the carrot, and then not looking perfect, but I can just sort of tweak it, worry the outline of this thing until it feels right. And if you're an Adobe Illustrator super user, you can get into the go beneath the hood and get into the more subtle nuances of the contours of that thing, but you don't have to for this exercise. Okay, and so I have an approximation of how that might want to look. Okay, so next, what's another way that I can particularize this form? I wouldn't say that we're nearly done yet, even though this is the simplest form. But next, I think I want to express this color variation. Oh, and here's one important tip I sometimes forget to mention. We have our magnifying glass, and we want to zoom in and just fill the stage, fill our view with whatever we're working on. We don't want to be worlds away from it. Some people end up working like this, and it doesn't make sense to me. So remember, the magnifying glass is here, Z on the keyboard. If you hold down Option, it'll go from zooming in to zooming out. Another quick way to do it, you can zoom in and out here by changing the number. Or the way I usually end up doing it is Command minus and Command plus on the keyboard. So play around, find the way that works best for you. Next up, I want to actually create a color transition, which I can pretty easily do by clicking on the color panel. It's not really available over here, but it is available when you actually have this dedicated color panel opened up. So you see here that I have, when I've selected this thing, I actually see this information will change to reflect what I have selected. If I deselect and I change things, it's not going to affect this object. Remember that. So don't spend a lot of time fiddling down with this color panel and then have it not affect your object when you want it to. Although you can repair that when the time comes. Okay, so select your object and then we'll play around with the color. You'll see how it changes. It's always good to know. You can click here under solid color and actually choose different kinds of gradients. A linear gradient, which has a color transition in a straight line, or a radial gradient, which is kind of like a starburst, where it goes out in a circle. A smooth transition from one color to the other. There's also a bitmap fill, which allows you to fill the the vector shape with a kind of JPEG or bitmap drawing, which is cool. Why that exists, I don't know, but I love it, even so. So here you can click on your swatch down here and just change the color associated with each of these swatches. I'm going to go to a linear gradient because I think that this gradient, going from darker orange here to lighter orange here, is something that happens in a more linear way. So I'm going to try to get something that approximates an orange on this end. And I can move these things around to determine like how dramatic or how quick the transition is between one and the next. I can also click down here to create new swatches. I can create whatever kind of rainbow effect I want. But wait, you ask, it seems to be going in the wrong direction. How do I adjust that? And for that, there are a couple of ways to adjust. I'm going to have 3 colors in here. I'm going to like do that. That might be good. I'm not going to pure white either. I don't think that would make too much sense. I'll go to like that color. Exaggerate a little bit to get the point across, maybe. I'm going to change the direction of my gradient with my paint bucket tool. And I can click and hold down, and the direction and the distance that it takes to go from one color from the beginning to the end of the gradient will be affected by how long I drag before releasing. So you can see that my gradations here sort of resemble my carrot. And I can work more to nuance this to get it closer to the original. And then it would be cool to, this is far from the color world that I want to be in, but it's an exaggerated version of the carrot. It's not far away from the sort of particularized version that I'm looking for this assignment. And I would continue to at least like hint at all these little gashes and contusions and like growth marks that have happened. And for this, you might want to, you could use probably the brush tool for something like that. Or maybe, what if you just use the line tool? You'll notice that as you work with these, that the line tool, the pencil tool, they kind of draw with the color designated for the stroke. And the brush tool, which is also a line tool, that actually corresponds to the color designated for the fill, which is a little strange, but it has meaning. I could do that, and then like distort it maybe. I don't know. Now the paintbrush doesn't, or the brush doesn't distort all that wonderfully. So maybe I'll do this and distort. No, I want a different color though. Or this color. So, and yet it's too thin. Would I do this? Does this suggest the contour line, or should I do a very small shape and then just distort it to look like these little gashes? I could do that, maybe. I don't know if I like that color anymore, but I could kind of do things like that. And one thing I don't like, oh, is it not? Huh. I hate when snap is turned on. Why does it feel to me that snap is turned on? It's being very rigid with me here. Very sullen. And if I zoom in, whoops, if I zoom in, I can, get more particular here. So I can really work on that for quite a while if I want. Maybe I would have like a fill color and a stroke color. That seems like it would be. Oops. And if I just cut that out, it's going to be a cookie cutter. So I can undo. One thing you're going to learn quickly in Adobe Animate is that you're going to have to undo a lot. And by default, you have 100 levels of undo if you want to undo. I've actually reduced that to save my processor, but you're going to find that half an hour into something you've made a mistake, way back, and your undos will just barely get you where you need to be. But I do recommend saving all the time. Save often. Save as different numerically advancing file names. remember where you save, back up your saves in at least 2 places, 3 places is better. Put your name in your saves, Brian Zagier, veggies, homework 1. Make it clear to me, make it clear to you. If you want to put the date, you want to put, label it numerically, all good, because then you'll be able to retrieve even major mistakes. So that's a start. We have a start of a carrot, and that's maybe the simplest one. Do at least 2 of the harder ones, and obviously the harder ones are probably going to be the cauliflower here, maybe this cabbage, and do some others too. I mean, probably this pepper is relatively simple. You're not going to build it with only one shape. You're probably going to construct it with with one kind of form, and then attach on the end something else. But try to get as as deeply engaged with the details and the variations in form of your muse in each case. And let's see how good you can do, how much variety we can get in the kind of handling of this through the simple mechanism of simple shape and distortion. So you'll be required to work in this way, at least for the beginnings of each of the forms, and you'll be required to use your simple shape drawing tools, also what was the word I was looking for, the color gradients, and yeah, show me a little bit of evidence of like free transform and that kind of things. The different techniques that I've just gone over today in class. Next week we'll get into working with the Wacom pen, and if you're a big drawer, you'll probably delight more as we move into next week's class. So save your file. Oh, I meant to mention that as you save your file, you'll notice that the file type for working files in Adobe Animate still remains from the days of Flash. It's a .fla, which was for Flash document. So try not to hide your extension if you're a Mac user, just so you can find it more easily. And be prepared to turn it in to me next week. Make sure to bring your 2 GB plus thumb drive or hard drive that you'll be dedicating to this class, and also your short write-up reflecting on your favorite animation from the early part of class where we watched the animated shorts. And if you have any questions, please email me on the email address or to the email address on the top of our syllabus. And that is all. Thank you. See you next week.